Dear friends, I am very happy to be with you here. As you know, I am always happy to be with you. And the moment I switched on my audio and video, I started receiving very happy messages in the chat box saying namaste. So, namaste everyone, of course. Most of you may know that our UPSC mock interviews in Delhi are going on. So you may probably know that I am here in Delhi. I have finished the day's work. I am happy to tell you, as I hope you will be happy to know, that our mock interviews in Delhi receive excellent response, absolutely from all over India. And in terms of the youngsters who approach Chanakya Mandal for mock interview and the feedback, they are absolutely and literally from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and from Kutch to Kohim. I was actually scheduled to talk to you on the very evening of 1st of February. Because of some unfortunate happenings that could not come through. And for 2 days, I have been missing it. The correct Marathi word is rukhruk. Rukhruk. कि मला रुखरुख लागून राहिली आहे. There is a special fun in conducting the session on the budget on the very evening of the very day when the budget has been presented in Lok Sabha. So that I will try to remove that ruk in my mind by talking to you now. And I will express my happiness, I will express my gratitude for technology for actually making this possible. So hope wherever you are sitting now ready, hopefully with paper, pen, heart and brain, all of it, for about 1 hour on the economic survey and the budget. And as usual, before I begin to touch upon those points, you know that I need to speak on. Don't get scared. Those of you who know me, they know that when I say that today we are going to take a look at such and such a subject, but before we come to that, there is something I want to share with you. And those who know me may probably miss a heartbeat thinking that, okay, this issue that Sir is going to speak is going to end for the full hour and probably budget sometime before the next year's budget is presented. That I assure you that is not going to happen. On the very date of 1st of February, UPSC gave a formal notification about prelims 2023, Sunday 28th of May 2023. So I would have liked to come to the classroom and talk to you and tell you about this notification and sort of alert you or urge you to fill up your form as early as possible. 21st February is the last date. But don't wait until last date like me. That is a very different story. I will not engage you on my autobiography today because we are always going to meet and talk. So please fill up your form as early as possible. When you fill up the form, you will feel, you will actually experience that now the battle lines are drawn. A sudden, new, unprecedented seriousness dawns upon us that now on 28th of May, I have to reach the examination hall half an hour before the stipulated time. And of course, clear prelims with flying colors. So as you know, all my absolute best wishes for all of you. Let us now turn to the Economic Survey of India 2022-23. This survey was presented in Lok Sabha on 31st of January. And we are also going to take a look at the budget for the year 2023-24, the budget that was presented in Lok Sabha by the Finance Minister, Shrimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, who in her own ways created a new record of being the first woman finance minister also to present her 5th budget in a row. This particular economic survey and the budget definitely has a certain significance. Everyone who knows something about the budget and also something about the political economy has been saying that this budget is the last full budget before the next Lok Sabha election. I expect of you to remember that next Lok Sabha election is due sometime in like April, May 2024. So on 1st of February 2024, as is the custom under constitutional practice, that since elections are due, the sitting government may not present the full budget. The whole democratic idea behind it is that that government does not have people's mandate to present the full budget for the year 2024-25. That mandate will be with the government that people elect in April, May 2024. As is the constitutional arrangement that all such times when for whatever is the reason a full budget cannot be presented, what is then presented is vote on account. Pratiksha conveyed in the chat box that it will be interim budget. Yes, interim budget is a colloquial word. The constitutional word for it is vote on account. If you remember that same was the situation in 2019. And then if you remember that in February 2019, when the budget was presented, only the constitutional name vote on account or informal colloquial name interim budget was used. Fact of the matter is, and I personally also still remember my session I conducted for the batches at that point of time, that although government in its wisdom has chosen to call it vote on account, what the government has actually presented is a full budget, really. Full budget. I will cite you one very important scheme that was announced in the budget presented on 1st of February 2019, which means that was the budget for the year 2019-20, when Lok Sabha elections were due, Government of India for the first time announced an annual help of 6,000 rupees directly to be deposited in the account of the concerned farmers through DBT, direct benefit transfer, for all those who are small and marginal farmers. And while announcing this on 1st of February 2019, government didn't stop at just a policy announcement. First installment of even 2,000 rupees was deposited in the farmer's account. This is political economy, government keeping the upcoming elections in sight, and the opposition also criticizing that budget and the policies mentioned in that budget on account of upcoming election. Now, the point here is that whatever happens on 1st of February 2024 is or was supposed to be the last full budget. Now, that also comes on the background of very serious global issues. That the year 2022 looked like the whole world in general and India in particular was recovering from Corona, was fast getting back to normal, and whether rest of the world indeed economically recovered from Corona is anyone's viewpoint or guess to be made. India is seen to be largely back on track. So it is important to see what the economic survey says. But I don't think anyone can deny the fact of successful vaccination carried out in the country of continental size. And now the whole world is seeing that as of today, China continues to suffer from Corona. India is very much back to normal. The markets are filled with buyers and sellers. And the aeroplanes, that is civil aviation, is running at full capacity. Railway limping back to normalcy through the year of 2022. You know and remember that the same year also saw beginning of Russia-Ukraine war. That war broke the global supply chains. That looked like affecting the whole global economy. I do expect of you to remember that Europe has been suffering from very many things, including slowing down of economy, supply of fuel, especially from Russia. So an unusually strong winter, and parts of Europe also suffering from drought situation. Economic question marks continue in America, therefore the whole world. But it is in that year that irrespective of post-corona economic effects and the Ukraine war, India is indeed seen to be getting back to normal. Not only that India is seen to be getting back to normal, but Indian policy is to attract manufacturing sector to India. The plan is to develop India into the manufacturing hub of the world. For larger part of last 30 years, China emerged as the manufacturing hub of the world. But probably with Chinese economy peaking, now Chinese population declining, the percentage of working population in China reducing to a very serious level, and the percentage of dependent family in China increasing to become a rather burden. It is sort of India's time to begin the proverbial demographic dividend. So the policies that may attract investment and industries into India to make India a manufacturing hub. Now, experts differ on opinion whether India has shown what they call as V-shaped recovery. Or some experts say it is not V-shaped, they say it is K-shaped. That during Corona, the economy went into a slump, reduced. But whatever policies that are formed during Corona, implemented during Corona, very many policies, that when we begin to look up after Corona, the economy bounces back to normalcy and rises up. If you agree to this assessment, then it means it is V-shaped recovery. The slump, and after that, immediate recovery. But some experts draw the figure of K. So they say the slump, but in the post-slump period 2022, some sectors of economy, yes, they bounce back to normalcy, but unfortunately, some sectors continue to be sluggish. For example, the economic survey for the year 2022-23 shows that the civil aviation sector, air passengers, that has bounced back to normalcy. Not only that it has bounced back to normalcy, it has grown by over 14%. So the rising up part of K. But some sectors continue to show the sluggish growth. Again, for example, and a very interesting fact is, while the civil aviation sector takes off, a similar growth is not seen in the railway sector. Freight traffic, thanks to the policies followed, takes off for railways. But the railway passengers and therefore railway revenue through passenger traffic is still sluggish, while Indian railways are showing qualitative improvement on very many parameters. So the budget for 23-24 is supposed to be more significant. When we see the performance of Indian economy, okay, Purnima says she is not getting about K-shape, so I will repeat. Think of the slump, the line that comes down. That was Corona-induced slump in the economy. V means the whole economy bounced back. So if we draw it on in a line chart on X and Y axis, it will look like the shape of V. K means, so think of the slump, but some sectors began to improve at a point of time and they began to rise, like the upper stroke of K does. But with some other, the slump still continues. The sectors are still sluggish, so the lower line of K. So if you draw it on a line chart, X, that figure will look like K. Therefore, it is debate between V-shaped recovery or K-shaped recovery. I am personally convinced, and I hope more you study the economic survey 22-23 and the budget 23-24, even you will be convinced that a firm foundation of India's recovery was actually laid down right in the midst of Corona. That, I will remind you, was like the worst of the part of the Corona period. But in May 2020, the Prime Minister spoke with the whole country and laid down his vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And after Prime Minister addressed the country for 5 days consecutively, the Finance Minister conducted press conference which was telecast live to the whole country. And for 5 days, a post-corona recovery package was announced step by step. That total package then was 20.97 lakh crores. But what was more important than this figure, 20.97 lakh crore, was approximately just short of 10% of GDP at that point of time. But what was more important than the figure was the policies laid down in this vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. That organizes and articulates the strengths of India. I will share one very important example with you. Once GST went into action on 1st of July 2017, India became world's biggest unified market. One taxation, one market. Entire India of like 135 crores became one unified market. I think your mind will begin to tell you that this reality begins to add to India's strengths. Think of, therefore, India as a fortress, the one single unified market with its own strength. This domestic market, the demographic dividend, our democracy, and adoption of modern technology builds India like a fortress within. So this unified market has its own strength in form of, let us say, over 40 crore Indians with comparable purchasing power to the middle class in Europe or America. Now remember, 40 crore means it is bigger than the population of entire EU put together, including Britain. 40 crore means it is entire population, more than the entire population of USA put together. We still have a serious, painful problem of poverty. Yes, we have to deal with it. But at the same time, we have this middle class within unified market becomes the strength of domestic economy, domestic market, and take off for various kinds of goods and services. So one unified market within which, as a thumb rule, we are able to save between 20 to 22% of our GDP. And that saved GDP is being successfully reinvested into the economy. Today, I will only tell you a thumb rule that this capacity of India within ourselves also ensures a GDP growth rate of 5 to 5.5% with our internal strength alone, whatever be the global situation. So there are direct links between the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision and the way it works out, including the year 2022 and 23. Today's session may not offer me one more time today to repeat the point, so I will make the point right now, right here, that across last 3 years, capital expenditure committed by government has been consistently and steadfastly rising. Like the economic survey for 22-23 shows that the capital expenditure was around 7.5 lakh crores, which in this year's budget increases beyond 10 lakh crores, and that becomes about 23 to 25% of the total budget. I hope you understand that the word capital expenditure means fresh expenditure in new developmental schemes. We are going to talk about fiscal deficit and what the economic survey talks about fiscal deficit, and the budget for 23-24 also has a provision for fiscal deficit. But overall, after due consideration of all figures, I'll tell you one sort of thumb rule that the fiscal deficit, which means these are market borrowings that government undertakes, that fiscal deficit is basically being used for capital expenditure. Now, this is a sound economic practice. If fiscal deficit is used for revenue expenditure, say payments of salaries, maintenance and repairs, then fiscal deficit is going to add to inflationary pressures because more money in circulation is going to be put in without corresponding growth of real wealth. But when fiscal deficit is used for capital expenditure, it means new projects, new infrastructure, which means new jobs, therefore new payments, therefore the market begins to lift up. So such a fiscal deficit may not add to inflationary pressures. That is seen in the economic survey of 22-23 and also now the projected figures for the budget of 23-24. It was just brought to my notice, and I'm happy to notice that our students have already noted 7 defining priorities stated in the budget of 23-24. I'm going to come to that. They also indicate developmental priorities. But what you will see in the economic survey is that wholesale price index, WPI, for the year 22-23 is 11.5, while consumer price index is 6.8. I hope you noticed a beautiful anomaly sort of. Normally, in macro economy, CPI is always bigger than WPI because the factors that are taken into consideration in calculating wholesale price index, okay, there is some more addition. The inflation therefore further increases when we take into consideration the factors for deciding consumer price index. So usually, if WPI is say 1, CPI could be 1.52, etc. Here, this year, you see it the other way around. That wholesale price index is 11.5 and consumer price index is 6.8. This becomes a special feature of our economy. Now, meanwhile, Indian economy has achieved the stature of world's most open economy. I have already told you that thanks to GST, India becomes world's largest integrated market. And the challenges before the budget of 23-24, they were to further continue development, continue to strengthen the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision, and at the same time, usher in a program of economic reforms. Such economic reforms, which are very correctly described as the second generation reform, They are also very correctly called as the factor reforms. That economic reforms in the first generation post 1991, they are called product reforms. Now is the time to reform the factors. I do expect all of you to know, remember, and now understand that in economics, there are always four factors of production, and it is production of wealth: land, labor, capital, and management. And it is certain that India needs reforms in these sectors. You will see an ongoing initiative in labor laws and an attempt to sort of reform, redefine previously existing labor laws, combine them and summarize them in hopefully four different labor codes. Similarly, overall question of public sector undertakings, and it was announced in the last year's budget itself, that given any public sector, there will be maximum 4 public sector entities in that given field. So if a certain field has more than 4 public sector undertaking PSUs, then some PSUs may be merged or some may be privatized. Government will be a player in the economy, but no monopoly neither with government nor with corporate sector. There will be competition, fair one, and government will continue its role. As I expect you to notice the question of bank privatization. Like IDBI is now up for privatization, and the nationalized banks in India will eventually be merged to make 4 big nationalized banks that will be able to compete at the global level. So when you study economy for the economic survey and then try to understand the budget, I will draw your attention to some basic entities. More you understand them, more you will understand the economic survey and the budget. So one figure with all its limitations, there are, but one figure to notice is GDP, and an attendant figure is GDP growth rate. Then see the sector-wise growth rate. So economy consists of agricultural sector, industrial sector, and service sector. And then look for some basic data on fiscal deficit. What was the target planned in the original budget and what seems to be now achieved? Then look for current account deficit, CAD. CAD is the gap between dollars that flow in and dollars that go out. Actually, until just a couple of months ago, India's CAD was very healthy. It was 1 point something percent, about 1.8%. It is healthy. As a norm and a thumb rule in global economy, a CAD up to 2.5% of GDP is considered healthy. So India was below that. But in last couple of months, the relationship between rupee and dollar has slided down. The rupee has slided down, crossed 80 rupees per dollar. That is a consequence of global situation. That is a consequence of changed policies, changed interest rates in the Federal Reserve of United States. And therefore, as rupee slides down, the valuation of dollars in our treasury automatically goes down. Add to that, the post-corona global situation, the Ukraine war, the breaking of supply chains. So our exports are adversely affected. Exports have reduced, while imports have increased. So increasing the gap, therefore our CAD, current account deficit, has actually crossed 4.4%. So now it is above 2.5. It is something to sit up and take notice. And similarly, our foreign exchange reserves, which were very healthy until very recently, have seriously come down to now $563 billion. Similarly, look for disinvestment. So there were policies and programs announced in the budget of 22-23. You must have noticed that Air India was successfully privatized in the intervening year. So it is privatization and disinvestment. But the provisional figure of disinvestments that we now have is actually not very satisfactory, not very good. Economic survey shows that in 22-23, government raised only 4.07 lakh crores through disinvestment. Similarly, for the year 22-23, there was this concept of asset monetization. Many government establishments which lie either unutilized or underutilized, those assets are thrown open for private sector participation. Ownership is not given over to so it is the government assets are not sold off, but they are made available for private sector participation and raise some money through that. And similarly, till very recently, there was an extremely serious problem of NPAs, non-performing assets. At a point of time, non-performing assets had crossed 9% of the total loans extended by the banking sector in the country. This is pretty huge. But now we see that it has successfully come down. And last year's budget had this concept of bad bank. Their more respectful name is asset reconstruction companies. The whole idea is that NPAs of banks are taken out and handed over to the specialist bank, which will look after restructuring of the loan and recovery of the loan. Once those NPAs are handed over to the asset reconstruction company, colloquially called as bad bank, the balance sheets of the banks viable and workable, and the banks can get on with their jobs. That also came in the economic survey 22-23. I will now bring to your notice some important figures from the economic survey for 22-23. India saw finally the growth rate of 7% for the year 22-23. You need to understand that this is based on the data for first 8 months of the economy, from April to November. The final figures are yet to come in. After that, there is calibration or adjustments. But provisionally, the present economic survey says that Indian economy grew by 7%, which means India continues to be world's fastest growing major economy. This economy therefore also predicts Indian economy to grow by 6.8% in the year 2023-24. You need to also note the sectoral figures. In 2022-23, agricultural sector grew by 3.5%. I need to tell you that this is reasonably healthy. The thumb rule is that the figure should be over 4%. It remains 3.5 for the year 22-23. Industrial sector grew by 4.1%. And service sector grew by 9.1%. So on the global background, and then Corona and Ukraine and the experts predicting global economy to go into recession during 2023. And at the same time, the same experts, IMF, World Bank, some major hedge funds saying that while the world may see recession in 2023, India can be the engine for growth. And India can help the world economy deal with this recession. So these are bright expectations of Indian economy for the coming year 2023-24. I would like to share with you one very important piece of information which is to do with the economic survey and the budget for 23-24 and India's perspective plan for this unfolding decade, which will go on till 2030. At Paris, the Global Agreement for Climate Change was signed. India has a major role in it. This was December 2015. Now, all countries were required to submit their intended nationally determined contributions, INDCs, after they were submitted to this United Nations platform, and they are considered, the word I gets deleted, and now they are NDCs. These are nationally determined contributions. Back in December 2015, the then Secretary General of United Nations had said that if every country prepares NDCs in the same proportion in which India has, okay, then the world will be able to achieve the target of keeping global warming under 2 degrees centigrade. So India's program, NDC, as a sort of for the world. In that NDC, we had promised that by 2030, India's energy production, so electricity basically, even today it is predominantly thermal electricity, coal and fuel. And it goes without saying that thermal electricity is a major source of pollution. So in December 2015, India promised the world that we will reach net zero level by 2070, net zero carbon emission level by 2070. We will reduce our carbon intensity substantially. Part of that promise was that by 2030, 40% of electricity in India will be generated through renewables, that is non-polluting energy sources. I hope you will be happy to know that India has already achieved that in 2022. Our electricity production as of now is slightly over 400 gigawatts, out of which slightly over 150 gigawatt is the installed capacity of the renewables. So now India has submitted a modified NDC to global community. And India says that by 2030, 50%, not 40. India renewed it. 50% of total electricity generated in the country will be through renewables. And while I must tell you, I had my own doubts about our ability to achieve it back in 2015. Now we see it is achieved. One part of India's policy is also to have electric vehicles and replace all fuel vehicles. The target announced there in 2015 is by 2032, all fuel vehicles will be replaced with electric vehicles. I must tell you, I had my own reservations about whether this can happen. But the way India is heading fast in the direction of green economy, at least gives us a reason to be optimistic and look forward to that future when we deal with these global issues of climate change, global warming due to climate change due to global warming and extreme weather events disrupting the whole human life, that we can deal with it successfully. And India seems to be a path. When I'm talking to you, I do expect that most of you will remember one of the 7 priorities of the budget for 23-24 is green economy. So now let us take a cursory look at the budget for 23-24. First of all, please note some broad figures. As is required under our constitutional practice, the finance minister presented revised estimates for the year 22-23. They show that the actual government expenditure goes to 41.9 lakh crores. Okay, so there is an increase in actual government expenditure. In the original budget, the targeted revenue through taxes, direct and indirect, that was 20.9 lakh crores. There was an important question here. I'll give a brief answer. Can there be fiscal deficit without revenue deficit? Basically, the answer is no. Basic answer is no. As usual, this single question can even briefly occupy about 15 to 20 minutes. But please give me time to first of all have this cursory look at our budget. So for 22-23, the target for revenue through tax was 20.9 lakh crores, against which the actual tax recovery is 23.3 lakh crores. And add non-tax revenue or capital gains or interest accrued, the whole overall government revenue goes to 24.3 lakh crores. Out of the government expenditure, that is total size of the budget, 41.9 lakh crores. I have already told you that 7.3 lakh crores is the capital expenditure. So the one that goes into new schemes, new jobs, therefore creation of wealth. It's kind of an investment. Therefore, you will see, and that is what the economic survey also says, that the fiscal deficit for the year 22-23 is at 6.4%. And then when the finance minister goes to lay down the budget for the year 23-24, just note one more small thing. It is the amount known as gross market borrowings. For the year 22-23, the amount I will tell you now is what government borrowed from the markets. That becomes a part of the fiscal deficit. I'm now telling you the amount. The amount is 15.4 lakh crores. So these are revised estimates for the year 22-23. To the year 23-24, which are now BE as they are called, budget estimates. The budget estimate for total government expenditure, which means this is the size of this budget, is 45 point something lakh crores, the total size. Out of which, through tax and non-tax revenues, government plans and targets 27.2 lakh crores to raise revenue. The gap between 45 lakh crores and 27.2 lakh crores is, of course, the fiscal deficit. This is 5.9% of GDP. Fiscal deficit is always measured as a percentage of GDP. So this is 5.9% of GDP. And finance minister also announced that the target is to bring fiscal deficit to below 4.5 by 2025. This is the broad contour of the overall budget presented. So remember the figures of 45 point something lakh crores as the total expenditure planned and committed in this budget, out of which government is going to earn 27.2 lakh crores. Then just take into consideration what are the components of government revenue and what are the components of government's expenditure. I'm going to be telling you slowly. So if you want to note it down, please note. First of all, the government revenue. Okay. Fiscal deficit, which means market borrowings, that government will raise that revenue through market borrowings and other sources, is 34% of the budget. Huh? Now this is 34% of the budget. Then GST and other taxes subsumed in GST will bring 17% of the total budget. Income tax accounts for 15%. Company tax, corporate tax, will account for 15%. Then there is central excise accounting for 7%. Then the non-tax revenue will be 6%. Customs will bring in another 4%. And there is capital gain for government, which is 2%. You will see that this adds up to 100%. This is how government is going to raise resources for the year 23-24. Now about how these resources are going to be allocated. So how this money is going to be spent. This money is 45 point something lakh crores. You will see that the greatest single component is interest payments, various interest payments on all loans, internal, external, etc. I'll come to the details. So the largest single component is interest payments, which is 20%. Then in the taxes and duties, government has to hand over, central government, union government has to hand over a part to the states. That is 18% of the budget. Then there are central sector schemes which account for 17% of the budget. Which account for 9% of the total expenditure. Then Finance Commission. I hope you remember that the ongoing one is the 15th Finance Commission. There are transfers to the states. They account for 9%. Our expenditure on defense is 8%. 8%. It is 5.34 lakh crores as an amount, but it is 8% of the budget. Then there are other grants given by union government. They are 7%. And the total expenditure on pension is 4%. You will thus see the figure of like 100%. Then when you try to understand this budget, take note of the fact that India's per capita GDP has now climbed to 1,79,000 rupees, which is double the amount of per capita GDP as it was back in 2014. Meanwhile, if you take purchasing power parity into consideration, Indian economy is already world's third largest economy. But if you take dollar rupee exchange rate into consideration, then as of today, we are world's fifth largest economy. The budget for 23-24 laid down 7 priority areas. Focus on 7. The finance minister used the word Saptarshi. At number 1 is inclusive development. And very many schemes to reach out to the poorer sections of society, ensure that they are involved in the development process, benefits reach out to them. I will draw your attention to some 3 or 4 important points. The PM Garib Kalyan Yojana, which ensures food security, especially for the poor section of society, will continue for another year. During Corona period and even in post-Corona period, more than 80 crore Indians were assured food security. And now I hope you note the beauty of the terms I'm using. I'm not an individual to use them. They are there in the budget. That now India has to travel from food security to nutritional security. It's a very important term. Huh? So food security will, ensure do ki roti for every human being. What about the nutritional quality, which will improve health, build younger generation, which will then take care of the health issues, and we will have an ever stronger, better, more healthy India that comes into being. Huh? Again, one of the most important examples is India's initiative at world level to observe 23 as the year of millet. Millets, as I hope you understand, are rich in nutritional values. Rice and wheat, while fundamental components for our food, rice and wheat are predominantly carbohydrates. They have, through like green revolution, or now the one that is being called as evergreen revolution, they have assured food security for us. But from carbohydrate dominated food, we need to go more towards proteins and other food products with nutritional value. So India has undertaken this year of millet. It is about changing our food habits, increasing the nutritional content, and thus changing the cropping pattern of India. So it is deep-rooted, has mid and long-term implications, but that major initiative is there. Then, of course, India is known as the pharmacy of the world. But in being that pharmacy of the world, we are experts in developing what is known as the generic medicine, over-the-counter kind of medicine, and we supply it to the whole world. But unfortunately, India is deficient in original research and development in pharma sector, especially that pharmaceutical ingredient, which is the basic input for developing a medicine, that is called API. API, pharmaceutical ingredient. Why am I on my feet forgetting A? Please note the word API. Active. It is active ingredient. It has to be developed through research and development. We were deficient, but the steps are being taken, and this budget makes special provision for research and development in the pharmaceutical sector so that India begins to develop APIs. Your mind must have felt attracted to one more very creative, according to me, it's a very creative, novel idea, that is to develop libraries at panchayat level, including libraries consisting of hard copy books and digital libraries also, and develop a culture of reading at like Gram Panchayat level, a very innovative and a creative one, and some impact that will go down to the last village. Second area of priority is named as reaching the last mile. It is mainly regarding tribal development, the one that gives priority and special attention to India's Northeast. And so far, there were aspirational districts more than 150. In the normal colloquial parlance, that was called as so-called backward districts. So instead of calling them backwards, they were picked up as aspirational, and very many schemes were directed toward those districts. Now, this budget plans to have 500 aspirational blocks. And the educational scheme of special schools for tribal kids, a chain of schools called as Ekalavya schools, that will be increased. in the second priority. Third priority, a massive one, is infrastructure and investment. You will remember the point I spoke about the sense of continuity in policies. I referred to capital expenditure. Now, in this context, I refer to a massive program and policy for developing infrastructure, the policy that is known as Gati Shakti Yojana or National Infrastructure Pipeline, NIP. And it is of over 100 lakh crores of fresh investment into infrastructure. So excellent roads, modern railways and airports and connectivity of the ports, and the scheme called Sagar Mala to develop new ports and highways and all interconnectivity. It's a massive scheme. I must tell you that I believe that in the years to come, we will see the face of Indian infrastructure undergo a change. And I hope you understand that infrastructure is a major multiplier in economy. So at number 3 is infrastructure and investment. At number 4, you will see that railway budget has now become a part of the overall budget, and it figured in this third priority area. Fourth priority area is called unleashing the potential. This is predominantly about good governance and the steps to be taken to ensure good governance, transparency and accountability. So it is a scheme called Mission is the face of bureaucracy, increase ease of doing business, and two very important areas to which I'm drawing your attention. One is now the importance being given to AI, artificial intelligence. So there is budgetary provision to develop 3 centers of excellence dedicated to artificial intelligence. In the decade that has already begun to unfold, AI is going to be a defining technology which is going to change the face of economy of our even day-to-day life. That is one area. And the other is increasing importance of data. Therefore, issues of data protection, protection of privacy, respecting individual and there is this national data governance policy that will come up, will ensure unified digital India, that is a program, unified digital India at the 4th priority. 5th one is titled as green growth. And I have already given you a broad outline when I was mentioning some critical comments about the economic survey and the budget. At number 5, as it must be, is youth power. We talk so much about demographic dividend. So for that to be dividend, there has to be focus on skill development. So we have new education policy that has begun to unfold. There are Skill India international centers to train the youth for developing skills required to work in the changing economy and technology. A major boost for tourism. The special scheme Go Apna India initiative for youth and a program of Swadesh Darshan, let youth travel all over India, meet each other, find out unity amongst ourselves and develop a fellow feeling. And the unity malls to be developed, there is one district, one product scheme. And such products developed need to find their markets. That will be through unity malls. And at number 7 is, of course, financial sector, wherein the focus is on protecting and developing the MSME sector, micro, small and medium enterprises sector. And accordingly, many schemes. I have given you a broad outline about the fiscal discipline. I will therefore come to, there was part B, which is about indirect and direct taxes. but I do expect you to have already noticed the change in direct taxation policy. There is a new scheme and there was an old scheme for personal income tax, and freedom is given to everyone, but now there is a nudge towards people increasingly accepting the new direct tax scheme, and the new tax slabs are defined, which offer huge relief, especially to the middle class. So, as critical comments, I will summarize 6 points. Okay, Vaishnavi says, can you please repeat 6? Point 6 was youth power. And I have mentioned, but at number 6 out of those Saptarshis defined for this budget, at number 6 was youth power. Okay. So as usual, with your permission, I will come to the last comments. I'm calling them as summary of 6 comments I want to pass regarding this budget. One is, we do see a pleasant continuity in policies. Like we spoke about capital expenditure, like the corporate sector also expressed its satisfaction over continuation of policies. For the corporate sector to design its policies, implement them, there has to be a sort of surety about various government policies. So when I'm telling you my take on this budget, I'm placing at number 1, the continuity in policies. At number 2 is this pleasant commitment to renewal. I must tell you my personal belief that we have begun to shape up ourselves for the future. Let's say adopting organic, adopting that is reducing dependence on chemical fertilizers, and adopting new irrigation techniques suitable for natural farming. You will see that this budget has made step-by-step arrangements, and in a very calibrated fashion, we will head towards this eco-friendly, evergreen agriculture. If you understand what Sri Lanka went through, and one of the contributing factor was a sudden adoption of organic farming, which affected Sri Lanka, in addition to the tourism sector of Sri Lanka being badly hit because of Corona. And Sri Lanka is still not out of that crisis. We are calibrating our march economy in an ambitious but well-structured fashion. Is a good reflection of that. At number 3, I am citing the capital expenditure, which reaches the highest level, and the capital expenditure will be funded from deficit. But like I already told you, this is a sound policy. If market borrowings are invested in new infrastructural and developmental projects, they generate new jobs, new people derive purchasing power. So it is a sound policy at number 3. At number 4, I am mentioning my akalan, my perception, okay, that while the experts were talking about the last full budget by Modi government before Lok Sabha elections of 2024, I must tell you my opinion that this does not come across as a populist budget, some cheap gimmicks to win over voters and all. Granted that this budget has something for everyone, the middle class, the youth, the farmers, women, tribals, corporate sector, yes, but without any, so to say, the populist gimmick. My personal take is that this is looking more towards next 25 years, the Amruta Kal, the word with which finance minister started the budget. When I take a careful look at the budget, I must tell you that I agree with this assessment getting India ready for centenary, the India of 2047. And this budget is not presented with eye on 2024, it is presented with eye on 2047. Fifth point I already made, but now I will mention it at number 5. That is, there is something for everybody. You interpret it any which way you want to say. Now, within this, if at all, some more expectations are to be presented, which are always there in any budget, I would say that I would appreciate a greater focus on job creation for youth. Training, skilling is there. Infrastructure projects are there, but with greater focus on creating jobs for youth, all of it at number 5. And therefore, I will mention point number 6, with which I intend to conclude today's session. Point number 6 is on the background of global crisis, Indian economy shines, is a promise of engine for growth for not only India, but the whole world. This is happening when India gets the presidency of G20. There will be some other time when I pass my own comments about that G20 part. Well, let us not blow it out of proportions. Let us not start thinking that India has already emerged as a world power. We still have a long way to go. This budget gives us every reason to be optimistic. Stock markets have temporarily responded in a mixed way. Some stocks went up, some others down. For a change, we see a strange anomaly, and that is while BSE, Bombay Stock Exchange, slightly went up, NSE, National Stock Exchange, headquartered in Delhi, slightly went down. Stock market is not all about economy, but it is kind of one pulse. And in the light of this unfolding whole Adani episode, it remains to be seen what happens. But overall, I would say a very good budget. On 1st of February, immediately after Finance Minister's budget speech was over, I took my own little time to sit down, go through what she has said again, formulate my opinion. And as a teacher, against the scale of 10, I assigned 9 for this budget. I had given this comment on Facebook and Twitter, and some of my friends agreed. Some said, yes, it is a good budget, but they would have their own reasons to assign like 8.5. Someone said 8, which is all most welcome. The master in me makes me assign 9 out of 10. But now you study, you go deeper. I want to actually close now by telling you one homework, which if you do, I know you're going to enjoy it thoroughly. I am urging you to read the Economic Survey 22-23, if possible, the full one. It is 400 approximate pages, out of which the reading part will be 350 pages. I must tell you that I have gone through it and I found it beautiful. My word is beautiful. Very well structured, well designed. And in one go, you want to develop an understanding of the entire economy, all issues pertaining to Indian economy. Economic Survey is the document. Please do read. And when we keep meeting, either in the cyberspace or actually in the classroom, we will continue to enjoy the discussion. As usual, I hope overall you have enjoyed the session. I look forward to your continuing to enjoy economics per se and keep getting richer and richer. With this, I will now seek your permission to close today's session. Okay? All the best, everybody.